everybody, and welcome to Horror Film Lovers. We're back for the second episode of Season 2, and we're here with...
Leila Toba.
And Jonathan Moody. We're here to talk about Upgrade. So, I've been trying to get Leila into more movies that she hasn't seen yet, and everything, and like rock her world into the world that I kind of know about, more horror stuff. You're a horror lover. You're a horror film lover. But the number one thing I wanted to talk about, I guess, with this is that I don't think you'd ever heard of this movie.
I'd never heard of it, no.
And it's a Blumhouse film, so it's not like it's not a huge kind of deal or whatever. Mm-hmm. But yeah, she hadn't heard of it, and I was like, you gotta see this movie. Because you liked Mayhem, so I figured you might like this one as well. It's just as crazy and a little... Actually, I think it's a little crazier than Mayhem, a little bit.
A little bit.
It's a different kind of crazy.
Yeah.
So let's talk, first of all, about the story. It's definitely a Blade Runner type movie where it's about the future, but it's not... I guess it's not supposed to be too far into the future, right? It's supposed to be, like, kind of happening now. Like, we are in the process right now of having cars that, like, drive us and do stuff for us and things, but this is like even a little bit, more, right?
Right.
Would you say like this is like if technology like was Terminator style, like was really trying to probably take over the world,
Right. And without giving too much away, essentially what happens to the lead character is that he suffers from a really terrible tragedy, which renders him like quadriplegic. Mm-hmm. And he has a client who he fixes old-fashioned or manual cars for that kind of gives him this technology that allows him to have the full use of his limbs again. And it's very interesting because then eventually the narrative leads into multiple characters with this bizarre biotechnology which kind of combines the use of robotics and nanotechnology and then the organic human themselves to create these kind of super beings, which is really interesting because my thing on that is that it's really got a very high sci-fi quality to it. For a thriller film. It definitely has the Blade Runner kind of feel for it because you're sort of watching these what you would normally consider to be regular humans that are actually unique and they're enhanced in some way by technology, and that's really interesting. It gives a whole new meaning to robots taking over the planets. Indeed, and then like what we could expect for the next evolution of man. So it's a really cool, opinion or commentary on that as well.
Yeah, and what I really like about it is it's kind of the irony of a guy who basically does not like the way technology is taking over the world. Like he hates it. He fixes cars up that he has to drive. When the world is like turning toward this other stuff. I mean, if you notice, almost every other car is a car that drives itself. So, like, on the streets, that's all that there are. And so this guy he doesn't like that. And then he's sort of forced into this thing to get better. He's forced to kind of take this thing called STEM that goes into his back that actually, that is supposed to help him walk again. And instead, this STEM actually starts to kind of talk to him. Come on, we can spoil it a little bit. It's fine. You should have already seen this by now. So, if you haven't seen it, I'm sorry. There are going to be spoilers. We'll put spoilers in the beginning so people know.
I hate spoilers.
I know, but it's better that we say.
Anyways, just ignore everything that he said. No, I'm just kidding.
So STEM basically takes over. The guy's he asked for permission. He's a very polite nanotechnology, that's stuck inside of his spine, or whatever. And he kind of like, he has he controls his brain waves and tells him what to do. And...
Well, what's really interesting about that, though, is not just how STEM takes over, but his response to it. Because this is also a vigilante story, which is very interesting. So you've kind of got a lot of themes going on at once. You've got, you know, the postmodern kind of society with like the self-driving cars and the cool technology, and then you've also got the upgraded humans, so to speak, that are part robotic, and then you've also got a vigilante heroic tale that's going on in the middle of it. So of course a lot of morals come into question about the main character's choices, about how he approaches it, and then later on his use of STEM, and then later on the hacking of STEM, which results in the main character's inevitable loss of control over the circumstances and even his own choices.
Mm-hmm. No, and I think that's just, there's just so much that happens in the movie that, like, you know, that's just kind of explosion of things that lead to the ending, which we will not spoil the ending for you. We'll leave it at that, but we will just say that there are some interesting characters in the film.
I will say, though, that I was actually very pleased with the ending because it wasn't what I expected.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoy endings that are like this one, and I'm not going to say anything about
like
it.
But I will
say that exactly. But I will say that the ending was satisfying because there were a few things about it that I would say that between the two movies that we watched, this one and Mayhem, I preferred Mayhem. But I've got some notes on Upgrade, and one of those notes is once again something that I kind of griped about, but only for a little bit. In Mayhem was that there is an overuse of a trope, which kind of leads to our lead character's, you know, storyline and what happens to him that feels kind of generic and cheap. And you know, I don't hate it. It was done short and quickly enough to where it was like, okay, it served its purpose, now it's done and it's gone, and that's fine. But yeah, so I do tend to take out points for that.
But you tell them what the trope is. Feel free to do that. Cause...
Okay, well, in the beginning of the movie, the tragedy that he suffers from is that the self-driving car that he's in with his wife crashes. It starts like speeding up and they lose control over it, of course, and they end up in a really terrible car crash, which they both survive, but then they're attacked by these thugs. And some of these thugs are upgraded part robotic people. Mm-hmm. And, you know, later on we learned that the crash, of course, was not an accident, that it had been planned the whole time. And,
but I like that.
And, and I think that's really cool. But, I mean, I guess for me it's just that, you know, it's like, oh, his wife died. And, you know, of course, so once again you've got, like, this very minimal use of, you know, her character just as, like, a plot device rather than, you know what I mean, to, like, kind of give way to it.
I kind of would disagree with you. And
I just think it's overused. His wife died. Now he's a quadriplegic. I feel like it's something we've seen many, many times, and it's not original.
It's true.
That's all I'm saying. Is that it's an overused plot device.
I'll agree with that.
And I do take off points for that because it takes away from a story's originality.
I'll agree with that because I was actually thinking, I just rewatched one of my favorite movies. It's called Kickboxer 2. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I actually like it better than Kickboxer 1, you know, or whatever. One day I might have to show it to you because it's actually really good. What?
Bring it on.
Okay. But there is that trope of, like, but it wasn't a girlfriend. It was the guy was in a fire and somebody else died. I'm not going to say who because it spoils. But there's a fire and he couldn't stop the fire and he was so he was so into himself about the whole thing that he wasn't looking at the bigger picture of, like, he's still alive and he's still got things he could be doing. You know what I mean? There's a life he could be living or whatever but he's thinking about is how a boy died because of him, you know, or whatever. There's a line in it. And that was what I felt when I was watching this, was I saw that in that, you know, there was another movie already that I'd seen just, you know what I mean? Like, you're right, it's an overused trope of, like, you know, I'm now being, it's all about me being upset because my wife died instead of, the fact that, like, look, you're still alive.
Well, it's that the trope itself is a simple vehicle to get our character where he's going. And so I feel like while it's an overused trope that I will take points away from, I still think that it's okay to use it to get there. But the reason why I take away points in this case is because there are so many ideas going on all at once that are really original and genuine and very interesting. And I feel like when it got down to the nitty gritty of things, how the character got to where he was going, that whoever wrote the beginning would got a little lazy, in my opinion. Yeah. That's all I'm saying.
Sorry,
you could have, that's not an attack. It's not an attack, but I'm just saying, it's like, it's always like, it's just when it comes to overused tropes, it's like sometimes you have to use them. Sometimes it's like, the new string of Christmas lights because the other ones didn't work. Sometimes you got to plug in something because you need it, and it's got to get your character where he's going. So I don't criticize it for that reason. I just criticize it because in the case with this story, it is really original and exciting and very cool. And I feel like, just having something like that makes it almost out of place, because when the movie started, I was like, okay, I'm not sure how interested I really am. But so from that point of view, it actually was a treat that after, the overused trope occurred, that it picked up and then it didn't let down from there. The rest of it was really, really good. There wasn't a single moment that I felt was like...
I honestly think the movie really got going once we introduced STEM, and everything. Once you met STEM and STEM started talking and, and everything, then I think the film really went, through the roof, because after then you're like, okay, this is going to be interesting. I don't know what's going to happen with this guy and this thing. But beforehand, you're right. You see that whole thing with the wife, and you weren't a big fan of the actor who played the wife, right? Like you weren't.
Right. Well, I'm a Meisner actor, so for me, I'm looking for very specific things that most normal people aren't looking for when they're watching something. But for me, they drive me crazy, and one of the things was just her constant body movement. It was distracting, and it was weird, and it was like, I was like, I couldn't understand it. It was very inorganic, and it just,
and you just said it came off nervous.
Came off as nervous energy. It's something that, when I've auditioned actors in the past, for, my theater company, it's like, it's the same kind of, frenetic energy that you see when somebody's just kind of bouncing around and they don't know what to do with themselves, and they, start just doing things with their hands, or, touching their face or something, and then they say it's a choice, but it's actually not. It's really just that weird nervous energy that has no place to go. So it starts doing it. And that was just more of a technical note that I had as an actor when I was watching the film that kind of got under my skin a little bit. In not a good way.
Once you notice that, I started noticing that everybody else, all the other actors, the husband, and even the lead cop who we love, the lead detective, she was wonderful.
Oh, she is really great.
And she did not do that at all.
And we need to talk about her.
Yeah, she was probably the best character.
She's a really underrated actor, I think.
Yeah.
And that might just be my misunderstanding because I've not seen a lot of her work, but she was in Get Out, and she was incredible in Get Out. And I think that we're talking about somebody with a very promising career who I think is very underrated. And I would actually like to see a lot more of her, if we're being honest.
Hopefully, she will be in a lot more stuff. She was wonderful in this. She was wonderful in Get Out. I absolutely adore her. She's in a lot of Blumhouse movies. So I would suggest people going to see, I think she was the Purge, election year.
Yeah.
I think she was in that and a bunch of other films. So she's definitely somebody to look out for. Also loved the leads, the main guy too. He was wonderful, and I loved the scientist who gave him STEM and everything. Both those guys were just fantastic.
Yeah, actually, I thought that the acting was really great throughout the entire film. I thought his mother was really sincere and definitely played her part in all of this. Very selfless, concerned mom. Very caring for her son. Loved the cop. Loved the scientist. The only thing that really gets under my skin, once again, is a little bit more on the writing side. Some of the dialogue felt a little bit forced, and in some cases, I felt like there was almost a little bit too much of things. I'm not sure what the character's name was, the scientist.
Aaron.
Aaron, yeah. I really like him as an actor, and I think that he's very interesting. He's got a really great look about him. But there were some points where I felt like he was almost trying to be too interesting. And then you see what I'm saying?
No, I know what you're saying.
And then it felt like, it's like, okay, I get that he's interesting. You don't have to shove it down my throat. I get it. You're interesting. You're eccentric. You know, and then he would almost like describe his own behavior like, but I'm not used to being around too many people. Was that inappropriate? And I was like, okay, really? Like, I get it, you know, but like, I'm going to get that from your behavior. I don't need you to tell me.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? If you're doing your job and you're acting that it's awkward,
that's true. That comes from the writing.
I don't need for you to tell me.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So for me to hear that in the script or like hear that in the dialogue, it's a little bit too much.
Yeah,
it's not necessary. I'm not mad at it. It's just that it's not necessary. It's one of those things where it's like, you know, you don't have to tell me. I'll figure it out.
No, I agree.
Because your audiences know, even if they're not actors or they're not working in the industry. I mean, even they can pick up on that kind of stuff. At the end of the day, like, you know, we can all read that kind of behavior.
Yeah, and and if it weren't for that, like, I think he would have been a great character. But they're like, he was a great character.
Yeah, there's no taking away from his performance at all whatsoever.
He did have like some like the way he like talked to people and the way he like shook his head. Like, it felt so.
He was beautiful.
It felt so awkward, so well, you know, so good. You know what I mean? Like, I love that awkwardness of him, of his character, because he felt like that guy. Because if you know, he like was that character that was, his house was underneath like these. You know, there's a big statue or whatever, and then you go under the stairs. He is a guy that literally lives in a basement. You know, like that's his house.
Yeah.
That's where he lives. Like. He's that guy that is sheltered, as you know, kind of scared to be around humans. You know, he's working on the next technology that's gonna to shake the world. However, this hasn't been, you know, I guess Gray, the main character, was the test subject of it to make sure it would work. But then again, it was all just a plot device to get, you know, this whole thing going.
Which is fine with me, because once again, it's one of the more unique themes that I really enjoyed about this film. You know, which to me tells me that the writer is highly imaginative and creative, and I really like his very unique ideas on things.
Well, in February, I think it's February, we gotta watch The Invisible Man, which, the new Invisible Man movie, which, the director did as well. So
very cool.
We'll have to check that out. You know, I'm not gonna say anything. I've seen the trailers and everything, but I'm not gonna judge anything based on trailers. Like, if it's good, if it's bad, we'll see, you know. But Upgrade was like my favorite film of 2018.
Really?
So yeah, I absolutely adore this movie. I do understand your parts in that thing. I even now, even after hearing it, I understand, but I still didn't take any points off of that, because I felt like that was just a story device to get it going.
Right, and like I said, sometimes you just have to plug those things in, because that's what fits and that's what works. And so, yeah, I don't criticize for that reason. The only reason why I take away points is because of how creative and original the rest of the film actually is.
Yeah.
And, you know, writing a film like that, it's hard to stay original to a concept that has been done a lot. But I think that the writer did a great job of staying true to their own ideas and original concepts about what has been an overused concept. It was, you know, I felt like I was watching the whole robots taking over the world with fresh eyes, and it was a very cool perspective. Plus, you tack on the whole vigilante theme, and I'm totally in. I love a good vigilante, and I thought that the actor executed that very well.
Oh, he was wonderful.
And once again, this is also a very high quality production, in my opinion. I really enjoyed the filmography. I thought that the acting was superb. So I actually will give it, I think I'm going to give it probably like 3.5 of 5 stars.
Okay.
But that is for taking away points from some of the writing that should have been taken out. There should have been some like things that were excised, in my opinion. Some of the way that the dialogue was written. And like I said, an overused trope in the beginning to get the ball rolling. And the weird like energy of the actor in the first couple of scenes.
I would still give it 4.5.
Okay.
But I can't do that. But I loved it. I can't give it 5. It's not
Jonathan
perfect.
is
but
easy.
I know. I mean, well, no, but I told you, like, this is like one of my this was a movie that, like, when I
It's
watched
such a cool concept. It really is.
Yeah. And the idea that technology is taking over the world to the point where it could even take over us, you know.
Yeah.
That theme right there, just in itself, like, shocked me to my core, because not that I'm afraid that technology is whatever, but I am noticing that we are in a world where we're heavy on our phones. We're using my phone right now to record this video. We're using phones all the time.
Absolutely. I believe, one day they might even be inside of us. Like, you. Right. But, I mean, one thing I will say, though, and I might be, like, a premature ejaculating here. I might be, like, getting ahead of myself. But I am going to go ahead and say it. Is that if the character Aaron himself, if there were, like, to be made a sequel or a prequel movie of this, I would be really interested to know, like, what the writer's perspective is of the background and the history of STEM, and then Aaron himself. Like, because I feel like Aaron is such a unique and interesting character. And that's another thing that I think I had to kind of take away points from, is that you've introduced us to this very unique and eclectic character, and then you tell us nothing about him.
Yeah.
And I want to know more, because the actor really delivered and made the character come to life in a very interesting and curious way. And I want to know more about him. And that's the biggest compliment that you can get in this industry, in my opinion, is that we want to see more of you. So, in that vein, I would like to say that I would be very interested to see a sequel or a prequel that talks about Aaron specifically. Right, like his childhood, what it was like growing up with him, what it was like, because he's obviously a very young man with some pretty high level intelligence, because not only do we see that he's capable of so much, like, technological understanding, like, he's almost like some kind of technological engineer, but he is also capable of doing surgery on a human being. So I'm really curious to know about, like, what his education is, like, what his background is, like, how do you make a person that has all of this intel?
Right.
Where does he come from? All these are very curious things, and I would like to know. I want to see him playing piano as a child, like, while he's being raised in Germany or going to some crazy boarding school. Like, what is his story? How do we get a person like Aaron in the first place, who creates this thing that sends the entire world into chaos, at least in their world at the time?
Yeah.
And is he responsible for the other, like, robots? I'm not sure what the name they had for the people who were kind of, like, you know, had the implants.
I think they ended up calling them the Upgraded.
The Upgraded or something like that. But I want to know, like, was Aaron connected to that in some way? Like, is this why he has all this money in the first place? Has he secretly been funneling money by having, you know, these surgeries? Is he responsible for the Upgraded? Have people been paying him under the table to do that? Is that where he's getting his money from? Does he come from extreme wealth? Is there a Bruce Wayne thing going
there's
on?
Also
Did his
more
parents
stuff
die? You know what I'm saying? To me, there are a lot of questions there that went unanswered, and I would be really curious to see that.
I mean, I can understand why they didn't do it, because there just wasn't enough
time to put
into
it wasn't
the movie.
His story.
It wasn't his story. It was great.
What I'm saying is that I think it would be really cool to see a prequel or sequel to
Blumhouse, if you want to make a prequel to that, please do, because, you know, I think
absolutely.
I think Lee would have a great time writing that. You know, and having a fun time with it, because you could still do stuff like horror action stuff with it, with him dealing with other people, and still make it an interesting movie. What I really liked about you know, the upgraded characters too, were that we did get to see kind of the different companies too. There's another company that they didn't really go. We didn't actually.
Still room for another story there.
Because there's, like, was it Cobalt or something? Was the other company that the girl was working for? And I mean, like, they picked these two people. Like, Gray was originally supposed to just be helping Aaron out on a car, like, or whatever. And apparently, I guess, you see, there's so much backstory that you don't know exactly, because there's still stuff that they could have either explained, or they could have, and maybe it would have, like, too much exposition would have hurt the movie, of course.
Yeah,
right?
Of course. But that's why I think there's definitely room for a sequel or a prequel. I think that this is definitely a good candidate for a trilogy or a series. I think there's so much, like, cool stuff going on here, and the writer has a very clear perception of his universe, and I would really love to hear more about it.
Sadly, I don't think it did as well as they were hoping it would, or otherwise, I think they would be planning to do Upgrade 2 or do a prequel with Aaron, but, obviously Lee went on to do, because he was doing, I think he had done Insidious right before this, then he did this as an original, and then he's doing The Invisible Man, which was like part of the Dark Universe stuff that for Universal, and so now he's so he's working on that and everything, which is great. But it would be cool if they could focus on something like that at some point. If there's like an audience for it, which I mean, that's up to Blumhouse to decide. They're the marketing people, we're not.
Right.
Like, we would love to see it,
but we're the fans, and we're telling you what we want. So deliver.
There you go.
Make us happy.
Make us happy. I'm sure other fans, and if you like this movie and want to, see more of that, let us know at the bottom. Comment, and give us a like, and or tell us what you didn't like about this movie. If you weren't a fan of the of Upgrade, which I guess it should have been called Upgraded, because that's what they ended up being. The original title was STEM,
right,
which is a great title, but I mean, if I had to choose between a movie like a title of STEM and a movie called Upgrade, I would have probably chose Upgrade.
Yeah, I actually I agree. I think that Upgrade was the better choice because it's funny that the title Upgrade is almost sarcastic.
Right.
In a way, because the upgrade isn't exactly an upgrade when you can't control it. When you've got things, I don't know if that was intentional, but it is it is a little sarcastic. It's like, upgrade? ?
Right.
It's like, so you get all these other perks, but then you lose your autonomy. So,
yeah, you lose your control of your, you had control.
But it also makes you question and think about what it means to be upgraded in that sense. So that's a cool name.
He had control when, in the beginning, but for like literally for like a minute. And then STEM was like, "Hi, how are you doing?
I'm about doing this. Let me do it for you.
Let me do it for you, so that you don't die, so I don't die,
But overall, I will say that I really enjoyed this film. I don't mean to Simon Cowell it with the rankings and stuff like that.
No.
But for me, a lot of my gripes are technical and they're very specific and they're not necessarily things that are going to affect other people. But I really enjoyed this film.
When it's 3 and above, it's a thumbs up.
That's exactly right.
So we still recommend the movie. It's just a matter of like, she did have some gripes on it. However, I still don't find those as
I'm
gripes.
a tough customer.
I'm very easy. If you entertain me, you're gonna get a high rating. Even if you're bad and you entertain me, you're getting a high rating. If you are
3.5 is a high rating for me.
Yeah, 3.5 is. I mean, it's really tough. I mean, she's a tough chick. We were trying to watch movies yesterday. She was bored, so we're not reviewing those. So there you go.
And it was my own movie. I had chosen it.
Yeah, that's right. She actually chose it, and I was like,
yeah, and I was like, no, I'm not.
No, she was like, let's watch something else.
Well, I have like a 10 to 15 minute rule. So like, if I start watching a film and I'm like, this is terrible, then I'll give it like 10 minutes. And if by 10 minutes it doesn't do enough, I'm like, we're done here. I won't put any more of my time into it. If it's almost getting somewhere, I'll give it 15. And if by 15 I see something I like or I'm curious, then I'll continue. Otherwise, I'll just let it go. And I'll never come back.
There you go.
You seriously have to sit me down and force me to watch it. Like, if somebody like Jonathan was like, oh no, Lila, you gotta watch it past 15 minutes, then I would probably give it a chance. But after that, no. So,
and she gave Upgrade, even with that one trope, she still sucked it up and said, let's keep watching.
I absolutely loved Upgrade though.
Yeah.
I mean, 3.5 is a high ranking for me still.
No.
I would say.
There you go.
If you get down to like 2, you're in the danger zone. But 3 or higher for me is
or
still
2.5 even. Like 2.5, I would say anything up below 3 is in the danger zone.
3.5 is still a good ranking for me.
Yeah, and 3's okay. But you don't want to get under that for us, and everything. And so far,
that's really another reason why I'm at 3.5 is because there's so much more that I wanted from this. Mm-hmm. I wanted more. So really, the reason why I took off points is actually a compliment. Is that I was so interested in the film and enjoyed it so much that I wanted more of it. That I wanted more specific things and I wanted details and I wanted to really get into that universe and feel it and imagine it and, feel like I'm part of it. And so Yeah, write me a sequel or a prequel, and
There you go.
maybe I'll change my rating.
That'd be great. Well, thank you guys for checking this out. If you guys liked Upgrade, let us know. If you weren't a fan of Upgrade, also let us know. Because, I mean, we want to hear your guys' thoughts. If you guys didn't like it, please tell us why. You know, I as far as I know, I haven't encountered anybody who didn't like it. Yeah. Anybody who's a horror fan thought it was great. It had enough gore, it had enough action, it had enough suspense.
This really feels more like a sci-fi thriller to me than a horror.
Yeah, maybe like sci-fi, definitely, and thriller potentially, but it's also got a lot of horror elements. I mean, the gore and the extreme case of like taking over control, you know, losing control. I think a lot of that is into horror, is into our fears. So I would still consider this a little bit of horror, you know. But you're right, it's more sci-fi. You know, it's still great. It's still a great movie.
It was a fantastic movie. We loved it, Lee.
And Blumhouse, you guys did a great job picking this movie, so thank you guys so much. I hope you guys check us out. We'll be doing more videos coming soon. Lila will be back for more. I'm gonna torture her for some more movies. Get her
I'm thrilled to be here. Thanks for having me.
Okay. All right. Bye, guys.